وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings and barakat during this month of Ramadan. This is a month of ibadat and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's also a month which is very closely associated to the Quran and the process of dua. If you look at the ayat of Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about fasting, He also talks about dua. And so what you see done in the communities around the world is not just a ritual thing, it is not a cultural issue, it's actually part of the tradition which comes from the Quran itself. Normally, what we have been doing for the last few years is we have been selecting different surahs, and we go through it briefly. For this month of Ramadan, the first 2 weeks, what I have selected is one of the most commonly recited surah of the Quran among the moderately longer ones, and that is Surah Yasin. And since it is a surah which is recited and read by us many, many times, it is probably worthwhile to look into the meaning and the message of the surah. Tonight, I just actually came from Africa last night at 8, so I'm still going through jet lag here. So we'll just have this introduction to the surah tonight, and we'll continue with the actual tafsir for tomorrow. When you look at the there's nothing coming up here. When we look at the surah, of course, this is surah number 36 of the Quran. It is one of the surahs which were revealed in Meccan era. And what I would like to do is just look at some of the statements that we have from the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt about the importance of this surah. Right in the beginning, there is a statement that we have from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, where he talks about this surah, and he begins, and remember this one sentence, the beginning of this longer hadith that we have from the sixth Imam. This first one sentence is actually also found in the Sunni sources of hadith. So this is a unanimously accepted concept that everything, inna likulli shay'in qalban, everything has a heart. Now, there's a whole discussion, you can go through it, you look at different things in the world, is there a center for it or not? And this is where the statement is from our Ma'soom, inna likulli shay'in qalban, everything has a heart. وَإِنَّ قَلْبَ الْقُرْآنِ Yasin. And the heart of the Quran is Surah Yasin. Just to see how much you remember in the last 2 years, we had a surah which is known as the bride of the Quran. Which surah was that? Surah Rahman. We did it 2 years ago. And so that is Urusul Quran, and this is Qalb al-Quran. And this is where we come to understand the importance of Surah Yasin, that it is considered to be the heart of the Quran. And then the Imam goes on to say the importance of this, where he says, فَمَنْ قَرَأَهَا قَبْلَ أَنْ يَنَامَ أَوْ فِي نَهَارِهِ. What are the benefits of reciting this surah? In this first statement, he says that if somebody recites that during the daytime, before he starts his daily routine. من المحفوظين والمرزوقين حتى يمسي. He will be among those who are محفوظين, those who are protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and marzuqeen, those who are sustained. They get rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until the evening comes in. And then the hadith goes on to say, وَمَنْ قَرَأَهَا فِي لَيْلَةٍ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَنَامٍ. If somebody recites it before, at night time, before they go to sleep, وَكَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَلْفَ مَلَكٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assigns 1,000 angels who will protect him from all the shar of shaitan rajim min kulli afat. And then the hadith goes on, and we don't have the slide for it, but let me just read it. وَإِن مَاتَ فِي يَوْمِهِ. And if that person dies while he was in the day or the night where he recited Surah Yasin, أَدْخَلَهُ اللَّهَ الْجَنَّةِ. Allah will admit him into the Jannah. وَحَضَرَ غُسْلُهُ 30,000 مَلَكٍ. 30,000 angels will be present there in the ghusl of that individual. كُلُّهُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لَهُ. All of these 30,000 malak, angels, will be doing istighfar for that person. وَيُشَيِّعُونَهُ إِلَىٰ قَبْرِهِ. And they will also be part of the janazah, bil-istighfar lahu, and reciting, maghfirah and forgiveness for that individual. So this is where we see the importance of this surah, which is known as Qalbul Quran. Now the question comes up that why is this surah called Qalbul Quran? And this is where I'm benefiting from our teacher, Hazrat Ayatullah Shaykh Wahid Khurasani, where in his series of lectures on this Tafsir of Surah Yasin, he beautifully talks about this issue, and he says, why is Surah Yasin is known as Qalbul Quran? And he says, to understand that, you have to find out the reality of the Qalbul Alam. Who is the heart of the universe? Then you will understand the importance of the heart of the Quran. And he says, if you look at our resources, the Quran and the Sunnah, when we look at it, the heart of the universe, Qalbul Alam, is none other than Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In Hadith Qisa, what do we recite? When Jibreel comes in and he says, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية. Everything which is there, he says, I have not created except for the law of these 5 individuals. And among those 5 individuals, تحت الكساء, who is the most important one? That is the Prophet of Islam. And that is where, we see that Qalbul Alam is Rasulullah. Now, what has that to do with the issue of Yasin being Qalbul Quran? This is where you have to realize that when you look at the name of this surah, this is a surah named after Rasulullah. There is a hadith that we have from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu salam, or his son, one of the two, 5th or the 6th Imam, where it says that there are 10 names of the Prophet. And 5 of them, فَأَمَّا الَّتِي فِي الْقُرْآنِ, 5 of them are in the Quran. One is Muhammad, the other is Ahmad, the third is Abdullah, the fourth is Yasin, and the 5th is Noon. And this is where we see that this name of this surah is coming from the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And since this surah is named after him, after the person who is Qalbul Alam, this surah now acquires that greatness from the person of Rasulullah and becomes Qalbul Quran. Just as Rasul is Qalbul Alam, the Quran, the Surah Yasin becomes Qalbul Quran. It is the heart of the Quran. And this is where we have to realize the importance of this surah. And the reason why it is called the heart of the Quran is because of the content. If you look at this surah, it can easily be divided into 3 segments. It consists of the concepts of Tawheed, as well as the concept of Nubuwwat and the concept of Qiyamah. And at the end, the 4th segment of the surah would be the summary of the 3 themes. So first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, one of these 3, and then the second and the third one, and then at the end he comes back to it as a kind of a summary of the entire surah. But if you look at the sequence, when we talk about the 3 most fundamental concepts in Islam, we hear these names, Tawheed, Nubuwwat, and Qiyamah. This is what defines a person as a Muslim. Anyone who doesn't believe in any of these 3 concepts, he is not considered to be a Muslim. If you have somebody who says, I believe in Allah and the Qiyamah, but I don't believe in Quran or Rasulullah, we don't accept that person as a Muslim. And so these are the 3, essential beliefs of the Islamic faith. And this is the content of the surah, which is known as Qalbul Quran. But then the question comes up, if you read the surah, the 3 themes are there, but not in the sequence that we know. The sequence is Tawheed, then Nubuwwat, then Ma'ad or Qiyamah. But in Surah Yasin, you will see it is first Tawheed, first is Nubuwwat, then it's Tawheed, and then it comes to Qiyamah. Why is Nubuwwat discussed first? And this is where we see again the connection of this surah with the person of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We'll see tomorrow that, he starts by talking to Rasulullah. Yasin wal Quran al Hakim. And then, innaka la ala siratim mustaqim. And then it goes on. And so initial address of this surah is to Rasulullah himself. And that is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm going to talk about my most beloved messenger first, and then I'll talk about my own Tawheed later on. Because it is through Muhammad that we reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where we come to realize that the connection of Surah Yasin with Rasulullah being Qalbul Alam and the Surah Yasin becoming Qalbul Quran. Another important message that we get from this connection is the issue that, do not ever think that we will be able to understand Quran fully and correctly without the help of Rasul who brought it. And this is where, this trend has been there in the Muslim world, and even now, people get into this attitude of what they consider themselves to be Ahlul Quran. They do not realize that you cannot have Quran without the person and the seerah and the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Which has been preserved by the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. And so going more to some of the ahadith that we have, 1 or 2 of them here, before we come to the iftar time. I think my responsibility is to keep you busy, not to think about food till Maghrib, so I'll keep you busy there. The 6th Imam says, Allimu awladikum Yasin. Teach your children Surah Yasin. فَإِنَّهَا رَيْحَانَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. Because Surah Yasin is Rayhanatul Quran. What is Rayhana? Rayhana is actually the the herbs which has good fragrance, which is used even in food. And it can also be, taken in the meaning of anything which has good smell. So a flower, for example. So this is where, our Imam is saying, عَلِّمُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ Yasin, teach your children Surah Yasin. Why? Because this Surah Yasin is Rayhanatul Quran. This is the fragrance. This is the itr and the perfume of the Quran. And that is why we see the importance which has been given to this surah in our societies, in our communities. One hadith that we have from the Prophet about this importance of this surah, he says, "Man qara'aha inda kulli maridin inda mawtihi." It is one of the recommendation is that if a person that he is in these last stages of life, one of the things is to recite Surah Yasin in the presence of that person. And this is where the Prophet says, when that surah is recited at that time, for every ayat which is recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down a malak, an angel. And that angel would be there, and all others, depending on how many ayat were recited from that surah, they will be there. They will surround this person, pray for his forgiveness, and also be part of the funeral process. Very similar to the statement that we had from the sixth Imam. And the hadith goes on. It's a very long hadith. Let me just end with the last sentence from the hadith from the sixth Imam, where he says, such a person on the day of Qiyamah, a person who recites Surah Yasin during the daytime or the night time and dies during those segments of the day and the night where he recited the surah, he says, وَيَكُونُ مِنْ رَفَقَاءِ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. That he will be from among those who will be the rafaqa, the friends of the Prophet. So who doesn't want to be that? And that's where we have to learn this. And I think, it's not that difficult to teach our children, how to even memorize Surah Yasin. I know from example of my own children on this issue, just by, a lady who used to take them to the school every day. She used to put Surah Yasin. This was not even planned. It was just there because of the environment. Even the environment of the sound where you spend time has an impact on you. Later on, you come to realize that, the child has memorized Surah Yasin, not because the lady who was driving them told them, or the parents said. It was just listening to it again and again. It became part of their memory. And this is something we have to keep in mind. Let me end with one question here, is that if Rasul is the Qalbul Alam, and because of his connection to this surah, it becomes Qalbul Quran, who is the Qalb of Rasulullah? And that is where you come to this hadith, where he says, Fatimatu bad'atum minni. And this is where we understand the importance of Fatima Zahra salawatullah alayha. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala salawat mani para. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our tawfiqat, accept our amal during this month, and inshallah give us the tawfiq to continue with the tafsir of Surah Yasin during these few days, inshallah.